And you're live.
Good morning and welcome to the Audit Committee meeting of December 16th, 2024. I call the meeting to order and note that everyone, with the exception of Anne Marie, is in attendance, so we have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from November 18th.
Mr. Chair, can we approve the agenda?
Oh, yes, let's do that. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, now let's do the minutes. Is there a
Make a
motion?
motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Let me make my phone be silent here. All in favor of approving the minutes as written signify by saying aye.
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 The minutes are approved. We were just discussing a moment ago, we do have a potential candidate, the first item being the Audit Committee vacancies, but that person is also a potential candidate for a couple of other positions, so we're waiting to see how that gets resolved. Both Mr. Cardillo and I have interviewed him, and I think he would be a great member of the Audit Committee, but he could be a good member elsewhere as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Meantime, I think we have 2 vacancies, at least one. So we'll see how that goes. But if you see anybody that you think might be interested in the Audit Committee, please send them our way and we'll try to fill that vacancy. Next item on the agenda is performance measures presented by the Assistant City Manager, Ms. Buckland.
All right. Thank you, guys. There are 2 documents from me that have been shared with you. One was shared previously, which was the actuals for FY24. And then one that I shared this morning, which is proposed measures for the 4 departments where we're making changes. So the 4 departments that that I worked with this year is Harbor Master, IT, Planning and Zoning, and OEM. So I'm going to start off with the Harbor Master. I just want to go over what's there. So their original performance measures, they had 4 of them, and they were, each of them was compound. So for example, the first one was improved customer service measured by fewer mistakes, fewer complaints, and more praise from the public, higher staff retention levels, few to no departmental accidents on boats. So that was the first one, and the others were similar, right? These very compound.
Let me stop you for a second. Is there something we're supposed to be looking at?
Tell you what, let me share my screen.
Right.
For the proposed ones. No, that is not correct.
Could have fooled us.
Well, that's weird. Why is that? That's not actually what I told it to share. Hang on.
We could see when you were just sharing your screen, we could see the proposed FY26 performance measures spreadsheet.
Oh, really? Because that's
Yeah.
not what's actually showing up on my Zoom screen. All right, I'm gonna trust you that that's in fact what has shown up.
Yeah, that looks like what I received this morning. So
Okay.
I'm looking at it right now.
I'm gonna run with that then. Okay. Anyway, so for the Harbor Master, one of the goals was to simply break apart these very, very compound measures into, in some sense, their component parts, but then to also really get at some of the heart of what they do. So you'll see that there are 4 main topic areas that we talked about: use and utilization of the harbor, code enforcement, customer service, and safety. When I was first getting to know the harbor master, one of the things they talked about was some of the parallels between what they do and the hotel industry when it comes especially to like the mooring balls and use of slips and stuff like that. So we ended up leaning into that for use and utilization. We're actually going to start with just the mooring balls based on what data is most readily available. We'll give that a run and see if we can expand that. But the main 3 items that you see pretty commonly in the hotel industry is occupancy rate, average length of stay, and availability. And availability is basically the denominator of occupancy rate, right? Like, do we have a lot of mooring balls that are offline? Have we given away a bunch for free, right? So, so you tend to look at all 3 of them to get some sense of how is our resource being used. In addition to that, Harbor Master has a couple of other sort of special things that go on. One is that they end up with options essentially over people who are just stopping in briefly, and they're doing hourly bookings as opposed to overnight bookings. And of course, the city has a lot of special events, and Harbor Master supports a number of them. So in addition to sort of core hotel type measures, again, focused more around the mooring balls, in addition, then looking at what percentage of our bookings are hourly, and then how much special event support are they doing. And that should give us the start of a view of then what's happening with use and utilization of that particular resource. Obviously, Harbor Master has code enforcement duties. One of the challenges for them is that there's a lot of their work that is sort of in the moment and in the field. And unlike planning and zoning, where they're they have a checklist, they're citing cases within Energov, the system they use, in real time. Harbor Master is not like that. So one of the challenges here in code enforcement is some revamping of data collection processes within the Harbor Master to keep track of all the various, hey, a violation, but where it wasn't cited, right? Obviously, they keep track of citations, but keeping track of all the ways in which they end up saying, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? That one's a little bit harder. So this is a little bit experimental in some sense. But what you'll see in the planning and zoning later is that this kind of view of what percentage of our cases are resolved through voluntary compliance is sort of is something you see in the planning and zoning side and the inspection side. And so we have a little bit of a parallel here. And when we'll see how that goes from a data collection standpoint. Harbor Master is already making some changes to support that. And then obviously a couple of the really big code enforcement issues that they deal with a lot: abandoned boats and street end violations. And so we're just going to keep track of those separately because those tend to be pretty long and involved. One of the things I should have said from the beginning, one of the things you'll see on this sheet is that I do like to keep track of what question are we trying to answer with these. And those should be not simply interesting questions, but hopefully something that illuminates some kind of decision point, either now or in the future. So you'll see along the side as we go along here, what questions did I have in mind as we were going through developing these. The application that Harbor Master uses to do their bookings for mooring balls actually does have a capability of doing surveying. So they were open to the idea of turning that on. Again, we're going to start with the mooring balls, but let's see how that turns out. So percentage of our customers who rate the service as good or excellent. And of course, the whole point being to encourage people to come back by having a good experience. And of course, then the other thing that's happening more and more is that they're actually doing welfare checks and needing to connect people with social services or other things. It represents a little bit of a shift in the breadth of folks that they're working with. And so we're just going to keep an eye on that. How often is that happening? And then the last is safety. So the three big incidents that are the most dangerous, and again, where the harbor master keeps good records on oil and gas leaks, rescues, and boats that are dragging anchor. So rather than kind of opening that up to anything, we're going to focus on the really big ones, number of incidents in these three big areas. Percentage of the harbor master staff with core training certifications completed. Harbor master has obviously a small core group of staff, but they have a pretty wide range of seasonal staff and supplemental staff that come in and out. And this is mostly geared toward them. The core harbor master staff, they obviously, they've been with us for a while. They're very, very knowledgeable. More geared toward that seasonal staff. Pump out volume and then discharge violations, both kind of geared toward more of an environmental look at what's happening with the harbor. So anyway, you can see we went from 4 pretty messy, maybe, performance measures. Now we have, this is what, 13, much higher number, but hopefully a little bit clearer, hopefully a little bit more targeted toward what is it we're really trying to accomplish with them. Any questions? And if this is too much detail, let me know. Yes, Alderwoman Pindle Charles.
Thank you so much. This is wonderful, breaking it down like this. One question, I know what seasonal staff are. Can you give me an example of what a supplemental staff person would be?
Oh, in this particular case, I sort of use the two terms interchangeably.
Okay.
They have a wide variety of part-time staff who come in, and that number varies over the course of the year. But I use the two terms interchangeably. I'm sorry.
All right, that's okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cardillo?
Thanks. I'm looking at a document that was prepared by Forest Consulting. Forest Consulting is the company that the city used on developing and implementing performance measures. This goes back to the spring of 2021. The Harbor Master's Office, you say, has had a little bit of continuity in staff. So this document that I'm looking at was provided to city managers and department heads, and I'm seeing some sort of gap between what the training that was provided to them and what the results are. There was supposed to be a development of, train the managers on how to apply performance measures, and then Forest Consulting took it and turned it over to the city manager's office to say, here, you now have the tools to get this done. I'm not seeing that.
I'm not sure I'm familiar with what you're referencing.
And I'm not sure I have it. I remember seeing it.
Yes, so it was provided to the Audit Committee, as I said, in April of 21. Forest Consulting presented, one of the questions I had asked was, have you given city management the tools to properly implement and monitor this? And Forest Consulting said yes. And now I see a department head that doesn't know how to develop performance measures. So I'm seeing some sort of gap here.
So, I started up obviously 2 years after that report would have been given. I actually, at no point did anyone ever give me a copy of that. I have started with, when I started with the performance measures as they existed when I arrived.
So
We
let me.
paid Forest Consulting a handsome fee for training and support.
Yeah,
And the understanding was that the support and training included the ability of the city to run this process themselves without involvement from consultants.
Yeah, my preference strongly is to have an internal process, to actually not have consultants in there, because the point is to have a reflection of day-to-day activities, which is the bread and butter of staff. I think that there are a number of ways of approaching performance measures. I've certainly seen a variety over the years. I find, and this is just the world according to Vicky, so take it with a grain of salt. I find the reason that I have in here, what question are we trying to answer? I find that there are a lot of performance measures that people develop where it's not clear, what am I supposed to do with this information? And so I like to explicitly start with what questions are we trying to answer, because I think it helps us focus on things that are actionable. I'm not sure that's the approach everyone takes. It certainly doesn't appear to be that way to me. I have no idea what these particular consultants, what their approach was. I will say that given the performance measures as they existed when I arrived, there are a number of them where I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with this. So I've tried to this is just me talking with the departments, try to talk through, what do we do? Why do we care about that? What question are we trying to answer? I don't know if that helped at all. I'm sorry.
let me first of all, I think we all need to I'm looking on my shelf of knowledge and I'm not seeing this Forest Consulting report anywhere up there. It might be there, but I wonder how many other members of the audit committee have a copy of that, and if there isn't some way that we can get a copy of that to everyone. Is yours in electronic form, Mr. Cardello?
Yeah, my greater concern, Mr. Chair, is this document should be resident within the office of the city manager, who is supposed to be the one tasked with implementing and training of performance measures, not the audit committee. The audit committee should be the one who ensures that the performance measures are being adhered to. So I want to see this document. This was part of the city manager's office, and this should have been handed off from the prior city manager to the current for maintenance purposes. It's not the audit committee's responsibility to handle that.
I agree. Mr. Huntley, you've had your hand up patiently.
Sure, and I will only jump in if we feel like we're complete with this discussion about the consulting report, because I'm going to take us in a different direction. Do you guys feel like we're wrapped up on that?
Well, I think I have some comments on this as well, but I think it still would be a good idea if it was given to the audit committee back in 21, it would be a good idea for us to at least be able to review it to see what it said. But I agree with Mr. Cardillo. I
Yeah,
think
that's
it's
fine. I mean, I can
primarily
circulate a
functional.
document if necessary, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
The point is,
Yeah,
I
It's-
was under the impression that city department heads were trained and knew how to do this. And when we look at where we are for FY 25 and FY 26, there's a gap.
so are you speaking to this particular set of measures, Mr. Huntley? Alderman Huntley?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
am.
that is-
So I just had two comments. Well, actually, three comments for our assistant city manager. First of all, this is really excellent. This is exactly the kind of data-driven work that we want to see. And I really also appreciate how you put this question we are trying to answer part. I think that makes it easier for us and for the public to understand. The two comments I wanted to make, I haven't heard much conversation in here, and I brought this up actually at our finance committee meeting the other day about the long-term mooring balls, right? So we have our stays for overnight, we have our stays for the hour, and then we also have our ones that are leased, for lack of a better word. So I just want to make sure that those are included as well, because I know many residents in my ward use those, and I think we wouldn't want a situation where in trying to maximize our revenue generation opportunities, we lean too heavily into supporting visitors and at the expense of residents being able to have a place to put their boats. So nothing, you don't necessarily need to respond to that, Ms. Buckland, but I just wanted to put that out there that I don't see
Yeah.
that reflected in here.
Actually, I can respond
I
to that.
will comment that there's pieces of their work that are missing in here when we're just doing the mooring balls. Because we're making some sort of large scale changes to their measures, we're starting with the place where we're the surest of their data, with the goal of growing that to cover more and more. So I'm not expecting this to be the end state.
Great.
Okay, I think next, Alderwoman Pendle Childs had her hand up, and then Mr. Nobiello.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. One answer to your query, Mr. Cardillo, may be that since 2021, how many new department heads do we have? And we've had several. So that may be where the gap is as far as transferring that information that you mentioned.
I understand. In this case, we're referring to the harbor master's office, where my understanding is there's continuity of management.
True. But
Thank
I'm just saying, once we get to the others, that might be a
Okay.
similar issue. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Nobiello?
Yes, it's Mr. Nobilio, but I know you're going to get it, Alderman. So it is challenging at times. I just want to comment. I think with the average length of stay, take care of Mr. Huntley's concern there, because if the average length of stay is larger, I would imagine, is it in fact including those leases? So the longer the average length of stay, the more those leases are potentially involved. That as that number ramps down, potentially it is the shorter term stays. I wanted to just ask that question.
Yeah, all three of those first three are focused on the mooring balls, and I should have made that clear because they're all drawing from the same data set.
Okay, so
as
would that
we-
include leases?
I believe that there are some of those mooring balls that are long term. I think there are some other areas, not just the mooring balls, where that long term storage happens. So
Okay.
I don't want to portray that this potentially covers all of the long term storage.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, I think all these measures, this is a great step in the right direction, getting performance measures in place. A couple of them though just jump out at me as like the percent through voluntary compliance, that component, number of welfare checks. Are those, do you really think those are components that the harbor master should be accountable or focused on? Just it seems possibly there could be some pairing here, maybe. Just want to throw that out there.
The voluntary compliance, to me speaks to, like I say, what is that relationship? And you see it also in the inspection side. And you will see it in planning and zoning. In some ways, that is partly a reflection of citations themselves, obviously more work, but there are other implications too. I actually had to issue a citation. It speaks to the relationship between the harbor master and the public. It speaks to, in some sense, how what kind of level of problems are they having? Are they low-level ones that we can just say, yes, people are fine? Or is this now actually like truly becoming a problem? And now we need to be doing something else. And the other thing, of course, is that, I'm certainly aware, and Harbor Master is certainly aware that there's a perception of them as being very strict and in some sense quick to pull out citations. I'm not sure that that's actually the case. So there's a perception question that sort of gets buried within this that I think is also worth teasing out in reality.
Okay, sure. And probably the same thing with the welfare checks, kind of in that similar line of the relationship with the public and so forth. Okay, great. Thank you.
Dr. Dickinson?
Yes, I was going to comment a little bit about what Mr. Cardillo was talking about with the forest consulting. I see it more of as a process, and it has been taking a while to actually get it into effect. Forest did a very comprehensive training for leadership, and we all attended that. I do believe it was during COVID, because I remember some of mine were virtual and I was at home when we did them. And then we had second meetings with the departments, just to go over some of the process that they were recommending we use. But I think there was still issues with consistency and development of measurable items that we could focus on, and consistency among departments. So when the city manager brought in the assistant city manager, that was one of the things that he was focusing on, is finding somebody internally to drive this through. So I see it more as a process of perfecting it, and working with Ms. Buckland has been very helpful, kind of to get it set in my mind about what finance might measure. We're a lot different than something like Harbor Master, so it takes somebody to kind of, I don't want to say hold your hand, but kind of push you and guide you in the right direction. So this is more of a process, and I think we're coming to a good conclusion on the process of what we're going to measure.
All right, thank you for that. I think I need to have a lot more concentrated time with you, Ms. Buckland, but I will say two overall comments. When I think of performance measures, I think of inputs, outputs, and outcomes. I think your questions start to get to outcomes. I don't know, do you intend to include in the spreadsheets for all of the departments a set of questions like this, or was this just something to show what you were working with the harbor master?
You'll see this same format for all four of them. What question are we trying to answer? There's a particular format that sort of gets published that includes some other things. What's your overall objective and stuff like that. When it comes to talking about why are we measuring this, which is the conversation initially with departments and is the conversation with you guys as well. I like having the questions there because I find it to be just having what is our objective I don't find that to actually be very helpful when it comes to having this kind of conversation. Because then you are more likely to sort of, in some sense, wordsmith the measure and lose sight of why are we measuring this, which is the thing that I think is most important to actually hang on to, of like, why do I care about this? So I've, in some sense, this is a little bit of a shortened version, but I find it to be helpful in terms of focusing on why do I care about this?
So that's a perfect segue to my next observation, which is I'm used to performance measures, actual personnel performance measures, where you have critical elements, non-critical elements, and then in case of what I did, a discretionary element that was determined by the employee themselves. But when I think of the harbor master, mooring balls is not the first thing that jumps to my mind, but that is the first thing on this list. And in fact, what I think of more than mooring balls is slips and managing slips at City Dock. But what I really think about in terms of the harbor master is the maintenance of safety in the harbor. And so I would certainly, I think there needs to be a better classification. Mooring balls, I think, would be a subset of slips and mooring balls. I think harbor safety and navigational protection and things like that would be my number one thing that I would expect out of the harbor master. And I don't even see anything here about navigation. But when we talk with the harbor master, particularly when I'm working with the harbor master on harbor lines, navigation is the number one thing. And I think that it is a very important function for the harbor master. This, by the way, gets to what Mr. Alderman Huntley brought up. I am working with the harbor master on increasing the number of mooring balls significantly. I'm not sure we're thinking about putting them in the right place, but that's an ongoing topic. But I think we would like to have as many mooring balls as we can possibly get placed, because there's certainly a big demand for them. We have long waiting lists for people to be on them annually, but also waiting lists for people who want to be on them when they're coming to town for a regatta, something like that. So I don't want by my comments to in any way minimize what I think is really good progress, but it does seem to me that when we're looking at these things, we ought to look at what is the number one thing that the harbor master does. What's the number two thing in terms of importance?
So the slips is actually a really good question. And that's partly why I said mooring balls is very straightforward. We're making some big changes. It's the place where the data is clearest. The slips, one of the, when we're looking at particularly the first one and the third one, the occupancy rate and the availability, the mooring balls are discrete, right? Do I have someone at the mooring ball or not? And the only question really is, it wouldn't be there if they didn't fit, right? But the availability is what it is. The slips is a little bit different because for some of them, there is a question of size. And so the question of availability is a little bit more complicated. And so the data collection around the slips is not as, it's not as straightforward as it is for the mooring balls. For some of them that it is, but not for all of them. Anyway.
Yeah, we need to talk about
point
that more.
being, the slips is where the slips is a good point. It should fit into this kind of paradigm. That would be a next step.
Right.
Yeah.
So mooring balls are also short-term and long-term. So there's transient plus annual. And I learned by getting involved with this mooring ball discussion that some of the yacht clubs actually do have leases that are longer term in nature, but are of a different quality than just a transient boater showing up. And they're also not as long term as um, an annual rental of the mooring ball. But look, I think this is really good. I need to follow up with you, and I don't know whether Alderman Huntley has done it or wants to do it, but I would really like to sit down where we can look at all of these things and start looking at continuity across all of the different performance measures and see continuity of the different kinds of questions that were in there. Let me ask, are there any further comments or questions about this? And I assume there'll be a similar set for IT, planning and
Yep.
zoning, and OEM.
We ended up taking more time for Harbor Master than I was anticipating, so I'm gonna gloss over the other three. If you want to have a fuller discussion, I'm happy to do that, but I don't want to take up all your time. The one comment that I'll make, in particular about IT, and I trust that my screen just changed for you because it's still not what's showing up on mine. Okay. The first thing that you'll see is cybersecurity. The measures in IT are somewhat standardized. You'll see this similar kind of thing in a lot of places. Cybersecurity is not one I would publish. I think we should collect it. I think we should track it. I think we can talk about it internally. I don't think we should publish it. But I wanted you to see, this is part of the conversation I had with IT, is software and hardware vulnerabilities do get rated. We should be tracking that and looking at the spread of the vulnerabilities that we have. The single biggest vector for cybersecurity, the biggest area of vulnerability in any organization is your people. So we are tracking percentage of the employees that are up to date on their cybersecurity monthly training. And one of the things that it turned out the city actually had the capability of doing, but had not been doing, was sending out our own test phishing emails, sort of a secret shopper in some sense of like, are people clicking on things they shouldn't be? Are they reporting them properly? And things like that. So we did talk about actually going ahead and implementing that capability, which is a little bit of proof in the pudding of, you know, okay, are people taking their training, but are they now actually following what they got trained on? So I wanted you to see this, but I'm not going to put this in the budget. I don't think that's a wise thing to put out in the public. The other things are really standard, right? Reliability, you know, uptime percentages, help desk support, right? And the website, they're very standard website measures, average session duration, number of unique visitors, the bounce rate. So there's nothing really weird in IT. It's really just kind of focusing in on what are normal core performance measures, with the caveat, I'm not going to publish cybersecurity.
So let me, because when we answer all of these questions, the finance director mentioned using this. We have this closely associated with the budget. When they report to the finance committee as we get the budget, they're telling us, the council, what they've done, how well they've done it. But I don't know, is column D going to be the answer? There's going to be a rating there in answer to the question?
So what you don't see here is what is the department actually funded to accomplish? That is a budget discussion, right?
Right.
So that part comes later. But these kinds of questions should be part of what we're talking about in budget development. Right. So what we don't have here are benchmarks, goals, right? What are we expecting them to accomplish? Because we're not there yet. That's a budget question. Right.
Yeah, well, except that's part of the reason for doing this. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a big reason.
Right, so this is, you know, are we looking at the right things? So that by the time we get to the budget, we have an agreed upon, this is how we're looking at things. The budget discussion then ends up being, okay, what are we actually funding? In these veins.
I'm looking at the time. Let me
Yep.
ask.
I
Go ahead.
will, I'm happy to talk more later. You'll see, OEM, planning and zoning, similar to what we've done here, trying to talk about what are their core areas. Along with the questions, all of you have access. So if you want to talk later, please reach out to me. But I wanted to give you some sense of what does this look like? What have I been talking with the departments about?
Right.
I'm going to stop sharing. And thank you.
Mr. Nobielio.
Nobilio, yeah, you're getting that. You're getting it's good. Okay, so one thing I would just like to strongly recommend is as you said, individuals are the biggest threat, particularly through phishing. Those self testing modules that come out, and that's a great metric for IT to understand their success with the training. That in itself could really be just a top down, vulnerability protection in regards to the city. So getting that implemented and then using those results as part of the metrics, I think would be very good. I've seen it done at several companies, and it's amazing how well that works as far as the.
Thank you for that. With the committee's permission, I'd like to move to the next item on the agenda, which is risk assessment, fraud and abuse hotline. And there's actually two components to this. I recently received an email from the city manager asking whether the juice was worth the squeeze. Apparently, over the entire lifetime of the fraud and abuse, we've had one complaint, which is still an active complaint. That's part two of this discussion. Director Dickinson sent a follow-on to that saying we pay for the service. I'm not sure exactly what we pay, and maybe you can help us with that, Director Dickinson. But unless it's an onerous cost, it does seem to me that this is a function that every government should have. But I open that up for discussion by the committee. Ms. Dickinson, can you tell us what the cost is for
It's about
maintaining this?
$1,000 a year.
And who does that?
It's called Lighthouse. I think it's called, I just looked at it, Lighthouse Global Services or something like that. They answer the phone line and take down on any details of the call, and then they will call the contact people, which may be you and the city manager or the Office of Law. I'm not sure I recall who the contact people are, but.
Comes to the Office of Law.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's a topic of a discussion in a moment that Mr. Cardillo brought up. But so I guess I'd like to get a sense of the committee. By the way, good morning, Anne-Marie. I'm glad you could make it. I remember the days of daycare, ugh. Please, the committee members, what is your thought about should we continue to maintain this hotline? Wow, that's an overwhelming enthusiasm for the hotline. Mr. Cardillo?
Thanks. My opinion, the cost is minimal. It was intended to be resident on the city website on the homepage permanently with a link to be clicked on. And it was both for city residents and for city employees. That was the intent of it. So city employees that identified areas of waste, fraud, abuse. So it wasn't just for city residents. When it was implemented, the city manager's office came up with a procedure on how to handle inquiries that came in. An ad hoc committee of the city manager, the city attorney, and the chair of the audit committee were supposed to convene on any inquiries that came through and to ultimately dispose of those inquiries. It was not the function of the audit committee to dispose of inquiries or to respond to inquiries.
So that's the thing that you sent me over the weekend. It says procedures for fraud, waste, and abuse hotline, bullet allegations received by third-party hotline provider are forwarded to the chair of the audit committee, the city manager, and the city attorney unless one of the recipients is named in the allegation. All three may access the report on the provider's website. I don't even know how to go to the provider's website. The way
Well, then we need to contact Lighthouse and get proper logins for those three people.
Well, that might be also just the handoff from Alderman Pion to me. Next bullet, if a recipient is named in the allegation, the report is transmitted only to the other two recipients of the report, if not uploaded, since we've only had one and none of that has happened. The mayor was mentioned, but not the city attorney or the city manager. Bullet number 3, recipient of the report will convene a meeting to decide how to handle each allegation from the recipient through the disposition. Now, does that mean, in your interpretation, Mr. Cardillo, that the city attorney, the city manager, and the chair of the audit committee will convene a meeting, or because
Yes.
it's kind of ambiguous?
No, that's how the recipients of the report, the three people who were named, will convene a meeting. That ad hoc committee will determine the disposition of inquiries through the hotline, not the audit committee. The audit committee should be able to see that a complaint was received, it was reviewed by the proper parties, and the disposition was handled this way. And the responsibility of the audit committee is to say, yes, we concur with the process was followed, and the response matches the inquiry.
And then it says, finally, reports pertaining to the allegation and any investigation will be retained by the city attorney. So reading this, and this is when you sent it to me the first time I was actually aware of that process, we've been proceeding all of these months inappropriately because we've been reviewing and getting information from the finance director and other sources. And that your interpretation, and I'm assuming it's correct, but I'll look to the city attorney, really none of that should have ever been exposed to the audit committee itself.
Yeah, this is an oversight committee. This is not an action items committee. This is an oversight committee.
All right. Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as whether we should retain and maintain the hotline, two things. No telling how many things we've thwarted just having it there. And the other thing is, too, it's like an insurance policy. We may never use it, but it's good to have.
So maybe at this point, I'll just ask a sense of the committee by yay or nay. All those who feel that we should respond to the city manager positively, that we should retain this service and keep it on the city's website, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any in opposition to doing that? All right, I will send an email to the in response to the finance director and the city manager indicating it's the sense of the audit committee that this is, as Mr. Cardillo characterized it, a minimum expense, and as Alderwoman Pendle Charles said, a form of insurance, and just I think a good public relations notion. But I also think maybe we need to think about making its availability more widely known, and we'll have to talk about how that's done. But thank you for that vote. The other half of this discussion is now a moot point because it appears that the draft report on the response to this one complaint will be between the city attorney and myself, city manager, and I've actually sent you an initial notion of a draft, which I've worked on a lot more, but I will be sharing that with the city attorney. So we can take that off the agenda. The next item on the agenda is new business, and it's the annual report that's usually provided for us by Ms. Moransky, and it's basically the dates that we met and who was in attendance. Is that something that we can rely on the finance department to provide for us once again? And we'll vote on it in January?
Hi, this is Kim. Can you hear me?
Yes.
The timing of the report is a problem for the committee to review because sometimes we have early meetings in a month and sometimes we have late meetings. We have a late meeting in January. The report is already due. So my expectation is, and it has happened in previous years, is I prepare the report, the chair reviews, we send it off. We can inform your committee at its next meeting, but it's not necessary for a vote. It's officially a report of the chair. So that is my thought right now.
Is that acceptable to the committee? Yes, I see heads shaking and others perplexed, but we'll proceed that way since it's due now. And next item on the new business is for the January meeting, which will be election of officers. I am sure that there's going to be lots of enthusiasm and agitation for that particular action. So, get warmed up for the January meeting when we'll take up that item. Last item is reports from the subcommittee members, which is the finance director. Is there a report from the finance department, Director Dickinson?
So yeah, the thing I'd like to talk about is the annual comprehensive financial report. The audit is wrapping up now. They're doing some of their final audit steps. There are a few things that we still owe them, but that should be coming to an end within the next couple weeks. Then there's the process of pulling the financial report together. As you know, the audit firm has been retained to help us with the final process of that and pulling it together in a book, but we still owe them financial reports for all the funds and some of the supporting information that goes into the report. That's going to be a slower process this year because I don't have an assistant finance director. The accounting manager and myself are trying to pick up the pieces and do that ourselves. So it's going to be another year where the report doesn't go out by the intended December 31st. It's going to be January. I'm hoping not to go into February, but I'm not sure yet. It's a matter of trying to isolate time on my calendar to work on this solely because it's a project focused task and the disruptions are many. I have vacancies again. The assistant finance director, we have one position in AP that we're trying to fill. Everything else is staffed, except for, of course, now we're also looking for a finance director. I will tell you that we conducted some interviews. We have 3 more to do for the first round. And then we'll be scoring and making a decision pretty soon on who to refer to the city manager, if any. So that's in process. I don't know what the timing is on a new finance director. I've committed to stay at least until March 31 to transition. Yeah. So I'm hoping we'll have somebody in here for a good smooth transition because it's a very complicated job.
Yes, it is. Are there questions from the committee?
Yeah,
Mr. Carmillo.
thanks. Just one quick question. Did the audit firm speak with the chair of the audit committee at all?
Sorry?
Did the auditors speak with the chair of the audit committee?
The external, yeah, I was interviewed, yes, about any deficiencies. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
There's a hand up.
Oh, yes.
Obviously losing the finance director, replacing the finance director, that's a high level role. And I'm just curious, what are the state, and I'm involved with quite a bit of these transitions, typically at controller level. What is the state of SOPs for the finance director role? And if in case the scenario was that a replacement was not found by March, so that there could be at least some documentation that could be relied upon by the new hire in getting up to speed on that position. I would imagine it's a very complex, multitask type role. Just wanted to ask that question.
Good question.
So I would say not a good state as far as time. I haven't, there's a lot going on. My predecessor documented some of it, but there's been a lot of changes since I've been here, a lot of new programs. And even some of the things that we were doing when I started were not documented as to how we proceed with the processing of those things. And I had hoped in the last 2 or 3 months, since I announced that I was leaving, I would have time to write this all down. And I think you're talking about the SOPs, or what you would call like a procedures document, like here's our sprinkler loans comes to mind. Here's how we process our sprinkler loan applications through the staff. Yes, we have some documentation, we have some staff knowledge on that, but there's no one place that it's all written down.
I'm sure there was a substantial document handed to you when Mr. Miller left, right?
Yeah, but whether or not it actually walks you through who's responsible for it and what our decision factors are when we're looking at these things, that's a question. And some of the policies were more internal, like how we're operating within a department, like dress code and things like that. Not necessarily here's our sprinkler tax credit program. Here's what we look at. We do have some of those, but I think that there's revisions due.
Oops, you're on mute.
Sorry. If I could close with a comment on that, it might be beneficial 60 days out to look to have some form of a interim resource, work with the finance director in putting together and documenting what the procedures are, and then doing a clean handoff to the newly hired person, if it comes to that. I'm just making that recommendation moving forward. That's all.
No, I mean, it seems like a very good idea. It never really occurred to me. It is succession planning, and I'm not sure how much of that is done anywhere in the city. We've had a series of directors of public works. One person was the director 4 times. So I think this is a good issue to raise to the city manager level and discuss that. We don't always have the generous offer of a director staying to tend to things as long as finance director is doing for us, which we appreciate. But I think this is maybe not an audit committee function, but I think it is certainly a city manager kind of question that we ought to be putting forward. Other than wishing each other happy holidays, is there any other business for the committee today? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So
Motion,
moved.
oh, second.
We are